Welcome to the Change Agent Podcast, where we are exploring the topics of leadership, project management, team building, technology, and so much more. The goal of this podcast is to help you improve as a project manager, a leader, a mentor, and value driver for your organization. Now, your goal is to be the best leader that you can, deliver value for your company or group, and improve the team's performance so that your team can operate at its peak levels. If that's a true statement, then you're in the right place. I hope you're looking forward to today's episode, so let's get right to it. Welcome back and welcome to episode 5 of season 2. I'm Eric, and of course, we're going to be talking about some more critical things in project management. And in modern project management, this is tailoring. You'll find this in section 3 of the PMBOK Guide, 7th Edition. So now, during my PM life days, all the days I've ever been doing this for the last number of decades, if you're doing a PMP certification or you're studying the PMBOK Guide, the Project Management Body of Knowledge from PMI, the Project Management Institute, they're going to tell you that the PMBOK Guide, regardless of what edition it is simply that. It's a framework. It's a guide. It is not a rule set that you must do things in these very specific orders and all these different things. Now, of course, if you do it the way that it's laid out in the guide, things typically go about as good as they can if you do it correctly. But it's not a rule, right? So the PMBOK Guide is just that. It's a guide. Now, when you go to gain your PMP certification, if that's a goal of yours and that's one of the reasons why you might be listening to these podcasts, know that that's the material within the PMBOK Guide. That's the material you'll need to know to pass the exams. There's also some Agile stuff in there too, but it's all covered in that same group. Now, it's important to remember that this is a framework that you're going to use as you move through your leadership journey, your PM journey. You can think of these guides as the left and right lines in the road, right? They're going to keep you bordered left and right as you move through it. Now, if you've just picked up the 7th edition of the PMBOK Guide, which you have to generally pay for or go find it in the library, you may notice that it looks quite different than previous versions of the PMBOK Guide, and 6 and beyond, of course. And so the previous versions kind of gave this feeling that there was more of a structured methodology, a structured framework for the way you employ project management processes and tactics and all those good things. But they all have their place, and there are times when you need that kind of structure. But we see in the edition 7, the 7th edition, that there is more of a principles-based and more adaptable framework. And the reason is because PMI recognizes that one specific size in project management methodologies does not fit every situation. And that's where we're going to be talking about today is tailoring. So for the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to talk a little bit about what that means, why it's important, when to do it, how to do it well, especially if you're a new project manager and you're trying to make sense of all the things that are going on, the tools, templates, methodologies, and so forth that are out there. So this will be really handy for you. So let's get right into it. So what is tailoring? So at its core, right, tailoring is about making informed choices. You're choosing to do certain things at a certain time, not being told, although that's not always a bad thing, but you are making decisions on what to employ, where to employ it, so forth and so on. Now, the PMBOK Guide defines it as the deliberate adaptation of project management approaches, governance, and practices to suit the specific context of a project. What does that mean? So what that means is that you are going to adapt all the different methodologies that you use in project management to achieve some result, right? You're going to do what you think is best for that particular thing. So think about it for a second. In your day-to-day life, right, we tailor things that we do in our day-to-day life constantly. We tailor how we're going to dress for the weather. We're going to tailor how we talk to our friends versus how we talk to management. We're going to tailor how we budget for a trip that we want to go on versus going out and getting groceries. In the same way, project management requires that we adapt our approach to the realities of the project that we're leading. Now, it allows us to ask certain questions as we start thinking about how to tailor a project or approach to lead the project. One, what's the best way to run this project, not a project, right? Because if you say, what's the best way to run a project? Well, that depends on what kind of project you have. So yes, what's the best way to run this project? Next, you might want to ask a question like, what kind of tools will I use and which ones do I not need to use because they're overkill? There are times when there are certain processes and techniques that you're going to use um, that'll be really relevant to a specific thing in a project that on a separate one, on a different project that you undertake, it's completely overkill. You might ask yourself, how involved are the people that I'm working with, my stakeholders? How involved will I be with my stakeholders? Am I building a bridge or launching a mobile app? I've talked about that before. Obviously, building a bridge is a bit more structured, right? Pun intended, I guess. Where launching a mobile app is a bit more adaptive, and you need to employ an adaptive mindset. So those types of things, waterfall versus agile, they are two different project styles and they methodologies, and they require different things. So these are all good primer thoughts to help get us in the mindset of tailoring a project, our approach to that, what our leadership is going to look like, and tailoring the needs more than just the motivation. That tailoring requires more than just the motivation to do it, right? We need something specific to get us started as we tailor our project, and that is the context. That was the statement I just made about this project. What is it going to take for this project? Now, tailoring, obviously, context matters. This particular project may require some specific form of tailoring. And so it really matters that you get that right and that you ask yourselves those particular questions. So why would we care about it? Well, we stated that no two projects are alike. They may be similar in some ways, but they're not alike in every way. Even projects within the same organization can have wildly different parameters of how you got to perform, what you have to deliver, who your stakeholders are, how much money you have, what the timelines are, where you're starting from, what is it you're starting with. So those different things matter, right? And while all those things do depend on team composition, timelines, constraints, and stakeholders, it's important that we apply tailoring to that. Now, the old school approach was a bit more checklist driven for, especially when you're looking at the PMBOK Guide 6th Edition and backwards towards, obviously the older days. Some project managers still tend to use a checklist driven approach. Did you create the charter? Did you create the WBS and the WBS dictionary? Do you have a communications plan, the project management plan, a stakeholder engagement plan? Do you have all that stuff? And while those things are still very valuable, today project management environments really require that you have agility, critical thinking, and above all, delivering value. So tailoring your approaches to leading the project ensures that your approach isn't rigid. You want to make sure that you have flexibility as you move throughout the project, because that gives you the best chance to respond to an issue or a risk. It gives you the best opportunity to take an opportunity to deliver value, maybe at a faster pace or in an unexpected juncture point. And so it ensures that you're not blindly applying certain tools and methodologies just because a textbook said so, right? Instead, you're using your judgment. You're customizing how you deliver the work so that the organization gets the best possible outcome and there's value delivered as fast as possible. Now, here's an important part. Tailoring is not cutting corners. So this, as I was talking a few seconds ago, I had this idea that in my head as I was talking that, well, it sounds like you're kind of cutting corners. Well, it's not. And it's not doing less either. It's doing what's right and what's relevant. Now, it may result in less work, but it's still relevant and it accomplishes what we're trying to achieve. It sometimes also may mean that you're going to employ more structure. So tailoring may be less agile and more waterfall style than some may have expected. But other times it might be leaner. You might be doing fewer processes. So the key is intentionality. It's about how you are going to intend to run the project in a way that best fits the context of the project. It would not make any sense to try to do a full-blown project management lifecycle on some small project like building a flower bed. You could, but don't you see it's a bit overkill, right? So let's take a brief look at these in action and how we can make it a little bit more real. So imagine that you are, let's say you're managing a software project where you're developing some software suite, and you have a remote team and a client that wants everything right now. They're fast moving. They have a very short timeline. They want gates to be done. They want backlogs to be completed as fast as possible. So would it make sense in this particular scenario to spend 2 weeks building formal risk registers, communications plans, project management plans, project schedules? Probably not. Especially work breakdown structures and the dictionaries that go with that, and then having all of that. No, you don't want to do that. Not for something like this. But if you're leading a high-risk defense contract with government oversight and people as subcontractors, yeah, you better believe that that really matters. In fact, in most cases, as a government contractor, which is where I spent 90% of my PM life, those things are required. You have to, they are deliverables. Those particular things like a communications plan, a project management plan, a schedule, all those things have to be delivered to the government in order to remain compliant with the contract. So you better believe those things matter in a particular contract like that. So what are some of the areas that you might want to tailor? Let's talk about that for a second. What can you tailor as you move forward in the process of thinking about how you're going to customize your approach to it? Well, you can tailor the development approach. Will you be using a predictive, which is waterfall, agile, or are you going to blend it and have them both represented in your style and have a hybrid model? What kind of governance are you going to have? I.e., who makes decisions, who's in charge, how often are those decisions revisited, and then what recourse do you have if you don't agree with them? Documentation. How much documentation is enough? Who does it have to go to? How much is enough to support the understanding and accountability of the project? You can tailor tools and techniques. Are you using what works for your team or just what people want to use or what's popular? I've seen this far too many times where we've hired, let's say, a software development lead, and the individual gets into the team, and during the interview, we may have asked, what type of techniques did you use when you did software development leadership, when you managed software teams? And they would go on and they'd spill out about 15 different types of brands of things they used, from Jira to Slack. And then they get onto the team, and we tell them to take charge of a team, but you have to use our suites. Now, that's not entirely a bad thing, because the company has built itself around the development of some software, and they use a particular workflow to get things done. That's not a problem to tell someone that these are the things that we want you to use. But as the project leader for software development, in this case, we should have been able to give them the opportunity to say, hey, what do you need on top of or in lieu of the things that we have that could integrate with what we've got? And so you may use Slack integrated with Git, or you may use some other Atlassian projects that maybe the company didn't have, some Atlassian tools they didn't have. So it's important that you really take a look at what it is you're going to be using and how you're going to be using it. What about stakeholder engagement? Do you really need to have weekly or daily check-ins? Do you need to have quarterly reports? So you're going to tailor as much as you can in order to be able to do those types of things. Now, one of the things that we want to chat about here is the decisions start and end with your understanding of the project environment. Now, the project environment we talked a little bit about last week, and these would be something like the performance domains. So here's where it links to and what we've talked about in other episodes, those performance domains. Now, let's talk about 3 of them, because in the last episode, we talked about 8 performance domains. In this particular case, just to get an idea of how tailoring links to a project management in the performance domains, we want to let's just do 3, because you can replicate it. So in the stakeholder domain, you are going to tailor how and when you want to communicate with your stakeholders. Not all of the stakeholders need the same level of attention. So you need to tailor how you're going to talk to these individuals, when you're going to talk to them, what you're going to talk to them about, how much detail you're going to give them. So you're tailoring the stakeholder performance domain. Now you're going to let's tailor the team performance domain. In this case, you're determining what structure works best. Is your team going to be a self-organizing team? Are they going to be matrixed, or is there going to be something else? How many functional managers do you have? What type of resources do they use, and how do they manage communication and conflict resolution within the team itself? Again, you're tailoring the team performance domain. There's a big one. Let's tailor the planning domain. How detailed do your plans need to be? How much planning do you need to have? Do you need a Gantt chart? Is a Kanban board good enough? Is Microsoft Project the thing you're going to use, or are you going to go to Smartsheet? Like there's just so many things you can tailor your approach to. So understand that in the performance domains that we talked about in episode 4, this is the time where you can tailor each one of those to understand how you want to lead your project. And that'll give you that overall bubble framework. Okay. Now, tailoring isn't something that's standalone and finite. It lives and evolves throughout the project lifecycle. Now, knowing this, you're already ready to place the key ingredient into tailoring, which is you, of course. Now, you are responsible for having that keen insight to do what you know or believe is best for the project. Tailoring is not doing what your boss tells you to do, although I would argue that that's something you probably should do, and taking recommendations is never a bad idea, okay? But I want to emphasize that word, you are empowered to lead the project from your management, so lead, right? So as a project manager is determined, whoever is determined to be the project manager by the leadership, they empower the PM to make decisions. And that's something you need to do. So that's what I mean by you're not just sitting around going, Mr. Adams, what am I doing? What am I doing here with this? What am I doing with that? Mr. Johnson, what am I doing over here with that? And always getting someone else to tell you what to do. You are leading, so lead. You define your style, you determine what your processes are, what fits and what doesn't, and make it happen, right? So that means you are responsible for tailoring. That's a question. It could be a question, right? Who's responsible for that? Well, you are, of course. As the project manager or the team leader, it's your responsibility, as I just said 100 times, to collaborate with your team and the stakeholders to make sure that you decide what fits and what doesn't. It is not a solo decision made in a vacuum world, and it should never be a static thing that once you've done it, you can't tailor it again. Of course, it's an evolution. You tailor it once, you tailor it again. The PMBOK guide obviously emphasizes this as a continuous process. At each phase of the project, you can ask whatever phases are determined within your project, you can ask yourself these questions. Is our approach still serving us well? Is it doing what we are hoping it would do, what we expected? Has anything changed in our environment that would require that we change? Are there tools that we're still using helping us still to deliver value? Or is that something else that we need to change as well? So revisit those tailoring decisions often. Think of it like sailing. You're constantly pulling the sheets. That's what they call ropes. Don't call them a rope on the sailboat. They pull the sheets to make changes on the sails, to make sure that they change the rudder position to change course. So they're always changing, they're always correcting. And this means that when you are on a project, you're doing the same thing. You're constantly changing, constantly watching and adjusting and adapting. Of course, tailoring also means changes between projects. And changes between projects, not just internally while the project is going on, but in between projects, also can develop something else. It can develop challenges. So let's talk a little bit about challenges with tailoring. Now, tailoring, you might think that tailoring is intimidating right off the bat. I would suspect that you're probably thinking like, I kind of feel like you're just making it up as you go, but it's not. Without a prescribed process, it can often feel that way, right? And that's some reasons why people look at textbook definitions of how to lead projects and they just want to go line by line by line. That often results in a very stressful, slow moving and dangerous and, just walking on eggshells kind of management style. But if you don't do it, you might feel like you're making it up. Well, that does happen, but it's better to understand that there are strategies you can use to make yourself stop feeling like you're faking it till you make it, right? So here's how you can overcome that fake it till you make it syndrome. First, you have experience. You wouldn't be here as a PM if you didn't have experience. So use your experience. You can also borrow that experience from other people. If you're fairly new and you haven't gotten a lot of experience as a PM, go get the ones who have. Talk to the mentors, research similar projects, reflect on lessons learned, talk to your other PMs who have done other projects and doing things that are similar so you can try to apply similar techniques. You want to lean into the principles that are notated in the PMBOK Guide. There are 12 project management principles in the PMBOK Guide. Principles like focusing on value, adaptability, engaging stakeholders, and these are all good things you can use and lean on to talk about tailoring, to decide and help guide you on tailoring. Next, don't overdo it. Sometimes you tailor so much, you end up reinventing the wheel. But remember, keep it simple, okay? Just keep it easy. All you have to do is just do what is required to meet quality and deliverable schedules. All those good things, you don't have to go and overkill everything. So ask yourself if you're doing more than you need to. In matter of fact, you could even have someone look at your tailoring results of how you're going to approach a project and ask them if they're going to, if they believe that it's overkill. Next, you want to document your rationale. So even if the tailoring does feel informal, even if it does feel unnatural, it does help to document why you made certain decisions, because that will support transparency, governance, and lessons for future projects. You can say, I did this for this reason. I used Smartsheet for my scheduling because I liked XYZ, whatever it is, or it integrated with this better, or it was easier to use, or I was able to collaborate much better, or I just simply hate Microsoft Project, whichever one of those it might be, right? So document it because it'll help give everybody the rationale they need to understand why you're making decisions, why you're making them. Next, the last one I think you can look at next will be the seeking recommendations and leveraging lessons learned. Again, we mentioned this in point 1 about using the experience, but looking at lessons learned is really important. Don't let history teach you nothing, right? There's so many times we've done things before and we just keep relearning the same pain all the time. Use the lessons learned that you have. Look at organizational process assets and see what's available and how they would apply to the project you're using. Look at management experience and get it. And get all of this is done so you can get pointed in the right direction. Okay. So it's important that you realize that tailoring is something you can do. You have resources to help you get there, to help you make your project a better experience for everyone all around and deliver on time and within budget. So let's wrap up some practical takeaways before we close out the session here. Tailoring is not optional. It's essential. You have to do it. You're going to do it. Even in projects that you're where it's predictive, right? It follows the traditional project management style and framework. There is still tailoring that takes place. You still engage people differently based on who they are and what they need. Okay. And the next is there is no perfect framework. There is no absolute answer for every single one of those that fits every single project. Every single project that you do requires that you have thoughtful decision making throughout the project from start all the way to close. And when I say close, I mean finished, like close, everything's closed out, not the end. Like, we just delivered our final deliverable and the customer accepted it. Well, there are a lot of things you still have to do after that. Okay. Remember to start small and stay iterative. You want to start small, going through beginning the project. Maybe you're just going to change 1 or 2 things, see how it works. And then you're going to continue to iterate that as you move throughout the project. Before you know it, you're done. One of the best stories that I've got about this is I was charged with a project that started out in the predictive methodologies, right? The predictive framework. This is waterfall. And it involved hardware integration, software development and integration testing, VV&A, all the good stuff, cyber, code refactoring, whatever the code. There were so many things that were going on, but it was when I took over, it was all predictive. There was no agile methodology anywhere on there. There were no sprints, there were no retrospectives, there were no backlogs, there was no product owner, nothing, right? And there was no schedule as to delivering what you had to do. We had so many customers that were using similar versions of the same software that you had for one suite of software, you had 4 different schedules depending on which customer you were working with. We decided about after year 4 that we were going to turn this predictive project into a hybrid model. There were certain things we couldn't get away from being predictive, but we were going to make it iterative where we could. So we started small. We picked out one specific thing. We created team syncs, and those are also known as daily stand-ups. And so we had the team. I directed that we had the team remove one meeting from the week, which would have lasted about an hour and a half, and replace that with team syncs every other day. So Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, to not exceed 10 minutes or 15 minutes. And it started off really small, and we did have some issues along the way because some people were not accustomed to an agile methodology and they didn't know what a team stand-up or daily stand-up or team sync was. And so they felt like it was the place where they had to talk about everything they're doing. And the answer to that is no. It's like, what did you do yesterday? What are you doing today? And what obstacles do you have? So that I can remove them. And those were the only 3 questions that were allowed. And it took time to teach and to guide team members to stop using it as a platform to do a status call. And this is what I did, and this is where we are. And it take them 30 minutes to go through all that. No, it was quick. Yesterday I did this, and it was one thing. And today I'm going to do this, and here are the obstacles I have. So start small, stay iterative. Keep an eye out on your outcomes. Your tailoring is successful if it helps you deliver the value more effectively, not if it just looks good on paper. So it has to be something that would absolutely work, and it has you ought to be showing not just where you're tailoring and what you're tailoring, but also how that tailoring has brought value to the organization. So tailoring empowers you, right? It empowers you as a project leader to lead with intelligence, not just instruction of do this, do that, do this, do that. It's where you can say art meets science, and where you shift from being a project administrator to a project strategist. Now people will start seeing you as the ability. Once you start employing tailoring, people will start seeing the reality that you have the vision to employ techniques, processes, tools, all these good things as they are best fit for the project, so that it best drives the best outcome for the organization. So that's it for this episode. If you found it helpful, I want you to subscribe to the podcast. I want you to leave some reviews, and make sure you share this show with your colleagues, your friends, and provide us recommendations on how I can improve. Now, if you like more information on how to engage with me directly, you can head right over to kalinavision.com. That's KALYN as in Nancy, A-vision.com. And also catch me on YouTube at Beyond the Glare, or find us on your favorite podcast platform to learn more and see how we can help you and your team get to the next level. Thank you so much. Go out there and tailor your projects. And until next time.